Hey everybody! Happy spring! It's actually spring for real. How are you going to enjoy your weekend? This first weekend of true spring. I'm starting by enjoying this outside in my backyard. This is my magnolia tree here behind me that will hopefully start blooming very soon, any day now. So I just am here today to say hello and just check in, see how you're all feeling after the week of the TechNec workshop. Is anybody sore? Is anybody feeling a little different than what you're used to feeling? Let me know. If you're going to be here in the replay, please say hello and hashtag replay. I'm going to keep it brief today. I just wanted to jump on and talk a little bit about my journey from point A to point B and counting. Because I realize that a lot of you don't know much about me, and I'm sort of an open book, and I kind of just always assume that people know my whole story, and I realized over the course of this week that that's not true. So I wanted to just kind of share how I got here today. So let's start from the beginning. So when I was a small child, oh, hello, hello. I see somebody jumping on there. Hi, if you're here, say hello. And if you're watching on replay, give me hashtag replay. So I was just saying that I wanted to be brief and just give a little rundown of how I got here today, because I realize that a lot of people do not know very much about me. So when I was about, I don't know the exact age, I'm guessing about 3 or 4. Um, I was in a car accident. It wasn't a severe car accident per se, but it was very scary, and I remember it very vividly. It was actually in a parking lot of the mall in my town of Steubenville, Ohio. And it was dark and rainy, and we were driving down one of the main aisles of the parking lot, and I was in my car seat in the back seat, passenger side, and I remember turning and seeing this huge, I guess it was probably like a blazer or something, like barreling towards us. And I could see that it was not going to stop. It was obvious to me that it was not going to stop. And I remember looking at it and bracing for impact because I knew that it was going to smack into us. It was going to T-bone us. And that's exactly what it did. And I was in the passenger side back seat, right basically at the point of impact. It crashed in the door. Um, I remember screaming and the car spinning, and when I looked down, my hand was covered in blood. It was very traumatic, very scary. Like I said, I was just about 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember it hurting really, but I remember it being very alarming. So anyway, obviously I healed from that. I got stitches. I have a little scar still on the side of my face from that. But all in all, it was really, I fared quite well from that. Um, However, we back then in Steubenville, Ohio, back in circa 1983, 84, I don't even know if we had any chiropractors in town at that time. If we did, we didn't know what chiropractic was. So, and certainly no one at the hospital directed me or my parents to take me to a chiropractor. So all we did was the stitches. I had to have like a liquid diet for a while, and then after everything went away, everything healed. It was fine, right? Supposedly. So fast forward, I went through my entire life. I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, feeling mostly fine. I was dancing that entire time, every night after school for several hours. Didn't really have a lot of issues. Why? Because I was really young and resilient and very healthy. And what the misalignment and the impact that the injury or that the accident had caused was not apparent at that time. It wasn't until later when I was in college at Ohio State for dance, and I was dancing probably twice or 3 times as much as I had been previously growing up, per day. And a stress injury started to creep in, and it manifested as many of you have mentioned to me actually, that you've been told that you've lost curvature in your cervical spine, and that it's basically like a stick straight spine. That was one of my issues. I had some disc issues. I had some bone grinding on bone. I couldn't turn my head. I couldn't look up or down. I couldn't move basically without debilitating pain. I had to take we were on quarters then. I had to take the quarter off of school. I was only allowed to watch dance classes. I was not allowed to move, nor did I want to because it was excruciating. And that was when it was during that time that I was referred to Dr. Mary Jo Marafa, who is the most amazing chiropractor in the world. She's in this group, and as many of you may be watching, over the years, I know many of you have come to me by referral from Mary Jo Marafa. So anyway, thank goodness that the Ohio State Dance Department referred me to her. She was the first piece in really changing my life. So I started seeing her on a regular basis. She hooked me up with all kinds of therapeutic equipment that I used for a while. She taught me how to tune in and understand if I was out of alignment, if I needed an adjustment or not. And slowly the pain started to reduce. Um, at that time, I had student health insurance, which was cool, right? I didn't have to worry about it too much. Um, After I graduated from Ohio State, I decided to fulfill my lifelong dream of moving to and living in the greatest city in the world, New York City. Um, and it didn't occur to me till I got there I no longer had health insurance. I no longer had a way to affordably see a chiropractor. So I started to panic and realize that the thing that I had been depending on for the last 4 years, essentially, um, was gone. It was gone from my life. So I had to figure out a way to start to help myself. So I began my search and I searched um, high and low, left no stone unturned. Throughout my dance career, Ohio State was really wonderful. Throughout my student career, Ohio State was really wonderful with exposing us to a bunch of different somatic modalities, mind body therapies, and I was hooked from the beginning on the concept of probably certifying in one of these other modalities, but I didn't know which one. I dabbled in a lot. I loved a lot of them. I've talked with you guys about Alexander Technique was a big one that I considered. Feldenkrais, Bartenia Fundamentals, um, on and on. There's more that I was considering. But anyway, I never made the decision at that point. I was living in New York. I was looking for something, and I stumbled into the Yamana flagship studio in the West Village on Perry Street. And I became the receptionist there, and that was absolutely a turning point in my life, probably one of the biggest ones of my life. I started working there, and one of my benefits was taking free classes. And immediately on taking class with Yamana, um, I started to feel different. I mean, different like I had never felt. Different, more different than I had felt after even chiropractic adjustments and things. Um, I started to lose my fear of certain movements. I started to find that I could, in fact, do things that I was terrified to do for the last several years because of the excruciating pain that I would experience. And I started to feel more and more confident in in my freedom of movement and in my ability to take care of myself, and I started to feel very, very empowered. um, and it didn't take long to decide to go through the training program. So this was back in, let's see, 2005 was the year that I moved to New York and started working at the Yamana studio, and it was 2007 that I completed the training because I knew, of course, that it felt magical to me, and I wanted to share it with everybody. So I began teaching, and I taught a little bit there at the studio, and then I followed a boy to Texas, which became my husband later, and I taught in Texas for a while. I taught in Houston, Texas, and met a wonderful community of practitioners there. In fact, some of my students there in Houston went on to become Yamana practitioners and are to this day practicing Yamana practitioners, which is so cool. I'm so happy that I was able to leave that small legacy there. Um, but anyway, so I followed the boy to Texas, and then he promised that he would follow me back to my home at the time, which was New York City. So we did go back to New York, and I went on and continued to study with Yamana there, and continued to work at the Yamana studio there, and just kept feeling better and better. My injury stopped recurring every once in a while. Like one time, I had a big flare up after we moved apartments. It's pretty obvious why. I wasn't moving mindfully, and I was stressed out. Um, but yeah, once I started taking classes and teaching classes, I just saw immediately how I wasn't in pain anymore, and it really did feel like a miracle. It truly did. So I knew that I needed to share it. So basically, since 2007, I have been sharing this work uh, everywhere that I can, everyone who will listen. Spent a few more years there in New York and got married, went on our honeymoon, didn't know where we were going to live for a while, did some walkabouts, did some traveling, and eventually, upon my husband's idea, decided to come back to where I had spent 5 years of my life already, Columbus, Ohio, where we currently are now. I didn't want to move back to Columbus. I wanted to move somewhere new that we had neither of us had ever lived, but we had a really strong network of friends and family here. So he convinced me, and I certainly don't regret it. And been living here in Columbus ever since. Moved back here in 2013. Have been teaching at various studios around town for many years. And just about when COVID hit, I basically decided I was ready to go rogue. I was